What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and I got a lot of stuff to cover in this video today. From the whole situation surrounding Dragon's Dogma 2 and its microtransactions, Baldur's Gate 3's director blasting the entire industry again, as well as some news updates surrounding Sweet Baby and how the Kotaku writer is openly admitting that they're writing their next hit piece and they want volunteers. There's a lot to go over, but as you likely know, Dragon's Dogma 2 is now officially out. I've been playing it myself. And I just want to say, from the get-go, as you watch this, if you're wondering why my character has a very zesty animation when he runs, that was totally by mistake. I clearly screwed up something in the customization menu when I was modding my walking animation, and apparently that resulted in my guy running like a fruity doofus. You can change these things in-game eventually, or you can buy a microtransaction to fix it as well. And yeah, of course, those microtransactions have been pissing off a lot of players, because Dogma 2 is obviously a fully priced single-player game. There's some issues that have not been addressed in Dogma 2 since the original, which I completed a while back as well. One thing is you can't fast travel for free, and it can only do so if you have a certain item which has a finite use. Of course, you can go into Dogma 2's store and buy those stones that allow you to fast travel for real money as well. And naturally, the fact these things are being sold is causing an uproar, and honestly, it's deservedly so. I hate that Capcom has decided to sell things like this in their online store for a single-player game. I'm well aware that their previous games, whether it's Devil May Cry or Resident Evil, also sell stuff in their stores too. But DMC mostly sells experience points, which I mean you just gain those by playing no matter what, which is just dumb that it's being sold regardless. And then there's Resident Evil, which allows you to buy unlocks that you can obtain by completing specific challenges that are not easy to do so, like beat the game under a certain amount of time or something. Honestly, I think Resident Evil's microtransactions and DMCs are also bad, but Capcom is absolutely taking the piss with Dogma 2. Simply put, in my opinion, a game that is this expensive should not be selling what should just be basic features in a video game at an extra cost. I would be sort of fine if Capcom decided to sell maybe outfits for characters that you can buy so you can transmog, like if they had outfits that were based on their other franchises that are available to buy. But I think selling things like basic fast travel or the ability to respec your character so they don't run like a gay lifeguard like my character does is really stupid. Especially considering I have like 130 hours in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and I recently beat it on hard mode as well. And you can just freely fast travel pretty much all the time whenever you want around its world. Of course, at some points during its story, fast travel is locked until you complete that story part, but generally speaking, you can just Goku instant transmission wherever you want, whenever you want. And I think what Dogma 2 is doing here is not good, neither for its own publicity or the ever-growing gaming market. Video games, as you know, are expensive enough as it is, and I believe these companies make their games designed on purpose to create these frustrating situations. And of course, this is done in order to then push a solution in the form of microtransactions in order to fix said problem. Which is ridiculous considering the game itself could have just fixed these problems to begin with. The Dogma 2 not having free fast travel is stupid in my opinion, even the original game didn't have it at release either. And if I remember correctly, eventually its expansion did add a free fast travel item, but I mean that was well after release. I'm not saying Dogma 2 needs to let me travel to every cave or camp I have found, but at the very least, just allow me to return to any major city hubs, like let me return to the main city whenever I need to or something. Of course, players will argue it's that risk of leaving and being caught in the dark outside of the safety of humanity that is the reason why fast travel isn't available so readily, or whatever else. But I just find it ridiculous, like even Elden Ring allowed for free travel, and so far anyway, I would wager Dragon's Dogma 2 is nowhere near as difficult as Elden Ring at all. In fact, so far the game is pretty damn easy all things considered. But what I've been seeing is some content creators who are aligned with Capcom as well as reviewers of the game all acting like they didn't know about the microtransactions prior to their reviews or launch. But then this article popped up from Forbes from writer Paul Tassi, who was also given an early access review code. And for those of you unaware, when you're given these codes, I even have experience with this too, I mean I've been given free games too. These publishers always send a guide alongside the code telling you what you can and can't show, and what date you have to wait until before you can release your video or impressions and so on. Anyway, this is important for Dogma 2 because Paul Tassi of Forbes said this in his article titled, "Why Dragon's Dogma 2 Reviews Didn't Mention the Microtransactions," and then continues by saying this. While many are annoyed with Capcom for implementing these in the first place, other fans have now turned their ire toward the hugely positive reviews for the game, hounding reviewers, leaving YouTube comments that they failed to mention the now controversial microtransactions despite knowing about them beforehand. So what happened here? Yes, it's true that reviewers did know about these microtransactions beforehand. I've seen the review guide and there is a link section about the microtransactions which gives you a PDF. All microtransactions are listed there, all prices are listed, the max number of purchases you can make for each item are listed, it's all there. So Paul confirms that these reviewers, content creators, websites, all of them, they knew about the microtransactions before they made their articles or videos about the game. And they all, for some reason, decided to not speak about these things in their reviews, which is so bizarre to me. Maybe these review sites or content creators were afraid if they brought it up, Capcom would blacklist them or something, but here's the thing, guys. It's a review, and it's your duty as the person doing the review to make it as informed as humanly possible. I'm not saying spoil the ending of the game or something, but my god, I think saying there's a microtransaction online store that is effectively pay to win in a single-player game should probably be mentioned, no? Of course, as Paul Tassi continues in his article, he says likely the reason why people didn't mention the store was simply because they never needed to use it, or the items available in the store were eventually found in-game anyway. Which has been confirmed, by the way. You can obtain character appearance respecs and all that in-game by using the Rift Crystal currency, which is separate from your actual gold, by the way. But the fact it exists to begin with is really scummy, and again, whether these reviewers felt as if they didn't personally need the microtransactions is not the point. The fact they didn't unanimously inform anyone about them is gross and biased in my opinion. Paul Tassi then decides to needlessly mental gymnastic his way to a reason for why this is happening, where he said this. I can understand why reviewers with a limited amount of article or script space would either glance at this list and ignore it completely. There is nothing in the game herding you into the store while actively playing ever, or why they would not feel the need to include it over much more relevant information. What? Limited amount of article or script space? Relevant information? Dude, it's a review. I don't think you're going to break the entire website you work for to write a few sentences, maybe a paragraph max, informing your users that, hey, there's a pay-to-win microtransaction store in this single-player game. And this idea also makes zero sense for any content creator that didn't mention this either, since you're making a video. Who cares if you have to add an extra 30 seconds to a minute to your video if the information added would clearly be very important? It just seems like to me that everyone who reviewed or got early access just didn't want to get blacklisted by Capcom or cause any problems for them. And that's just sad and pathetic to me, especially when the writers of these games' websites who review these things always say stuff like, oh, we need to do better, and then conveniently forget to add these things to the conversation. Not to mention, not having these online stores affects their scores of the game either, honestly. It's just one big stupid and sad situation all around. If Dragon's Dogma 2 just had fast travel, no online store for this kind of stuff, and just implemented free character customization like Elden Ring and so many others do, this game would have easily soared high with reviews and players alike. It could have become the next Elden Ring easily, I'm being serious too. But this now just seems like an unnecessary blight on the game's otherwise glowing reception. Well, that is if you're playing on consoles. Apparently the PC version runs like dog water at times, but I can confirm, for me anyway, that while I was playing, which is what you're seeing on screen now, the game ran at its stable 30 FPS lock, which is dumb by the way. The game should be 60 FPS, I don't see why not. But regardless of whatever reason on Capcom's part, the game runs perfectly fine on PS5 based on the limitations that they've placed. So Dragon's Dogma 2 is yet another game that is being released on PC that feels unoptimized. It's a 2023 debacle all over again, when pretty much everything was unoptimized for PC, from Star Wars, Jedi Survivor, Wild Heart, Atomic Heart, what was that other one called? Wo Long, and the list keeps going. And from what I've played of Dogma 2, it's a fun game. I don't think it's amazing or anything. I feel like it's more an expansion pack for the first game besides looking better. But I don't think it's a game of the year or anything yet. I'm around level 14, I'm the fighter class, and I'm doing the main quest. I would give it a 7 maybe, an 8 max as of right now at times. But this industry, and even the content creators who gain access to games like this early, they need to do better. It's pathetic none of these outlets even mentioned the store until the game was released and fans found out the hard way. And speaking of doing better, let's mosey over to Baldur's Gate 3, where its director just pulled his nuts out and let him hang. Baldur's Gate 3, unsurprisingly yet again, won everything at GDC this week as well. And Sven Vink, the director and owner of Larian Studios, took his time on stage to blast the greed of the games industry, where he said, and I quote, "Greed has been screwing this whole thing up for so long. Since I started, I've been fighting publishers my entire life, and I keep on seeing the same mistakes over and over and over. It's always the quarterly profits. The only thing that matters are the numbers, and then you fire everybody, and then next year you say, crap, I'm out of developers. And then you start hiring people again, and then you do acquisitions, and then you put them in the same loop again, and it's just broken. You don't have to. You can make reserves. Just slow down a bit. Slow down on the greed. Be resilient, take care of the people, don't lose the institutional knowledge that's been built up in the people you lose every single time. So you have to go through the same cycle over and over and over. It really pisses me off." End quote. And what he's saying here is true. Besides the industry at large being gripped by nonsense like identity politics from all angles, the other big dragon in the room is of course corporate greed on all levels. These executives are just greedy as hell, and they keep bleeding talent and ruining studios time and again. There's a reason why BG3 was as good as it was, besides the fact it was made by a private company in the form of Larian. It's also because the staff actually feel like they're valued members of the team. And I think there's that one part that really exemplifies why the industry is on fire, and why so many AAA games that have come out recently anyway have been less than stellar. Which is where Vink says this: be resilient, take care of the people, don't lose the institutional knowledge that's been built up in the people you lose every single time. Like, that single part there could explain why so many games are bad right now. Look at Suicide Squad and how poorly that's been doing, and then remember that the founder and director of all 3 Batman Arkham games that Rocksteady made left the company along with the other co-founder and a whole suite of veteran devs from that studio to make a new company. And because they didn't foster and listen to these veteran devs who clearly knew what they were doing, like, hello, they made the Batman Arkham series into what it is, they instead filled Rocksteady with ESG young hires who clearly were nowhere near the caliber of the old guard. And that's how you go from previous games averaging in the high 80s to mid 90s on Metacritic, to Suicide Squad, which has a 60 on Metacritic. You can apply this same thing Vink said to other studios. Look at BioWare with Mass Effect or Dragon Age, or Bungie, which lost around 100 devs and profits dropped by 45% last year and more. I'm not stupid. Well, not entirely. I am a little bit, let's be real, but I'm at least somewhat smart enough to realize that besides the woke plague killing everything we love, there is absolutely another meteor-sized catastrophe in the shape of corporate greed that is descending and lobotomizing the entire industry of creative talent in the search for fast cash. And I think as companies and executives get more greedy, you're going to be seeing more games that are just expensive as hell, but of lower quality, like Suicide Squad, that will nickel and dime you for cosmetics and whatever else. And the fact we have Capcom over here pushing needless microtransactions at Dragon's Dogma 2 is showing that the edge is not only slippery, but we are all barely hanging on at this point. And that's why I implore people that if you don't want these practices to become the norm, that you vote with your wallet. Unfortunately for me, my copy of Dragon's Dogma 2 arrived the day the game came out, and by then we all realized the microtransactions were a thing and it was all too late. And it's a shame, because yes, you can play the game without those microtransactions, and there's absolutely a great game that is here to enjoy. But this industry is becoming way too greedy, dude. And like I said before, the fact we have games making themselves actually worse on purpose like Dogma 2 only to sell easy solutions via online stores is gross. Baldur's Gate 3's devs have gone on record that the game will never have microtransactions at all. And now they even confirmed that they aren't developing DLC for it either, and will also not be making a Baldur's Gate 4 as their next game. This may sound like bad news to many, but I think it's smart for Larian to do. Cause there's no way they could make a BG4 without Wizards of the Coast, which owns a D&D license, not somehow strong-arming demands into a potential BG4 with microtransactions or live service elements. Remember that when Wizards laid off people late last year, Sven Vink confirmed that pretty much everyone at Wizards he worked with when conceptualizing BG3, they aren't at the company anymore. And I think Vink knows better than anyone that these companies are insanely greedy, and he's well aware that if he stays in bed with Wizards and continues making Baldur's Gate games, that any future release will come with demands before they relinquish the IP rights to Larian again. Sure, you could make BG3, but why not include a battle pass? Maybe an online store with cosmetics. Maybe some pre-order DLC missions for $5 extra. It's so easy for these things to happen. It's why it's called a slippery slope for a reason. I'm perfectly fine with single-player games receiving DLC if it's worth it, like Final Fantasy XVI has the Rising Tide DLC coming in April. But I think the game itself, which has no microtransactions of any kind, is worth the asking price to begin with. And I think the more we normalize these greedy practices, the worse they'll get. Just look at how woke weirdos will continue their insane ideological pushes if given any breathing room, so too with the corporate greed of the industry as well. Sure, right now in Dragon's Dogma 2 you can buy fast travel stones or character respecs, but what happens in the future when they eventually realize that they can get away with it? Then they'll sell you level up boosters, maybe your character will get tired and be less efficient. But then you could buy the Comfy Pillow DLC and your characters will rest up and be good and more optimal for future fights if you just pay a little extra. Like if these things get normalized, eventually you'll be paying real money to upgrade your equipment in a single player game. Or be paying actual bus fare to fast travel. These things cannot be normalized. And if we let them win with these practices, we'll never see the end of their greed and it sickens me. And when we're not being nickel and dimed and being taken advantage of, we got morons killing the souls of video games as well. Remember that woke weirdo who was working on Marvel's Black Panther game? Well, they doubled down. From thatparkplace.com we have this article titled, Marvel's Black Panther developer Dani Lalonde's attempts to explain her race-based hiring discrimination against white people. To quickly catch you up to speed, this Dani Lalonde was the person who said they only hired black people when they made their visual novel dating sim game called Validate. We should probably quickly watch that clip that went viral because with the context, it makes the rest of this way funnier. So here's the clip.
I have a team of 21 right now for Validate. It's a pretty big team. It's a crazy big team for indie games. But who is your team? Validate has a team of mostly all people of color. We have no white people on our team. I did that because I wanted to create a safe environment. And I know the best way for an environment to be safe is to be around people who are just like me. And I'm not saying that white people in the industry are creating unsafe environments. I'm not saying that. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that sometimes it is hard to work with white people because they think that something made okay, but it was really a microaggression. And no one wants to deal with that while they're trying to make a game that they love.
And the internet, of course, clowned on her, but it gets funnier too. Not only did Validate only peak at 80 players on Steam during its release, which is catastrophically bad, but even the people who played the game rejected the practices in the game too. So Validate has a bunch of characters you can date, I guess, and only one of these characters is a white person named Keaton. Anyway, this is funny, since apparently Keaton was also the most popular person players wanted to date. I'm not kidding. The devs even said this via Twitter. Hey, real talk, giving the most attention to Keaton, our only white playable character, and not the other 12 characters of color is very heartbreaking to see. You guys can do whatever you want, but just know that was never the intention when we put them in the game. When approaching media, please really think about your bias when it comes to white characters versus characters of color. How you treat them, how you interact with them, etc. It is very important to have these thoughts in your mind, especially when it comes to media with majority people of color. So even when they make a game for woke weirdos, they end up belittling their own players for not agreeing with their ideology 100%. So it's no wonder this Dani person doesn't want white people around them whenever they work. Because they hate them, obviously, and only want people around them who push their narrative and ideas. I should also remind you that this Dani person is also an ex-Sweet Baby employee, because of course they are. And when they got heat for saying that they don't hire white devs, they said nonsense like this. Posting that tired-ass screenshot of the Google definition of racism, I just don't care anymore. This made me laugh, because it's always these racist woke types who hate concrete definitions of anything. They believe everything in the world, like actual indisputable facts, should be as diverse as the thoughts in their head. So when you show a person like this the actual definition of racism, nope, that's not a gotcha in their eyes. Cause racism is like gender to them. There's a billion versions of it. So naturally, them being racist is somehow not racist because they can conveniently change what it means to fit their needs. Don't you hate it here? It's all complete nonsense. Dani would end up doubling down, shifting goalposts, and changing what she said to fit her agenda. Via Twitter, she defended what she said in the video, and I quote, "This video is a bit outdated, recorded in the summer of 2021. Validate was released in September of 2022. From when this video was recorded to release, we had a few white developers join our team to help us with some music and audio needs. Nowhere in this video did I say we don't hire white people or that I hate white people. I very clearly said we wanted to make a team that reflected the values of the game we were making. As a lead, you pick the best person possible for the job. In this case, the best people for the job were the people who understood the kind of game we were making. Developers working on a game full of queer characters who understand the importance of queerness in games that is realistic and respectful towards queer people. In the latter half of the video, I spoke about microaggressions in the workplace. If you are a person of color, you understand precisely what I meant. That being said, I am very well aware that white people are not the only ones who can commit microaggressions in the workplace. Microaggressions can be committed by anyone towards anyone else in the workplace, but in the context of what I was talking about, I had fears of certain treatment towards my marginalized workers in the workplace. I wanted my team to feel safe while working on Validate." End quote. So this is just a long-winded way of saying that she's racist, but also not, because the definition of racism doesn't apply to her because nothing has meaning anymore and everything can be changed to fit agendas. Then of course there's that Kotaku writer whose article made the whole Gamergate 2 thing even worse. Anyway, they're now apparently working on an article that attacks Melanie Mack, who's a content creator. You've probably seen her before. They said this via Twitter. "There's a story I've been simmering that I really want to pick up back again. If anyone has any connections to a prominent female Twitch streamer gaming personality who leans very hard into Christianity and homophobia, DM me or email me at link in bio. I'm particularly interested in people who knew this person before their sharp rise in popularity." Of course, this then made people very quickly realize Mercanti was talking about Melanie Mack. And Mercanti then doubled down, asking Melanie to join her at Creator Clash so Mercanti could physically assault her as seen here. Once again asking Melanie to join me in Creator Clash next year. So Mercanti clearly wants to go to war with anyone who disagrees with her, and probably since Kotaku has now been forced to make guides for the site instead of virtue signaling, which is still hilarious by the way, she's of course now doubling down. I doubt Melanie Mack would agree to this, and why would she? This Mercanti person is clearly just a hateful, spiteful individual that wants to attack people in both written form and physically for not agreeing with her. I should probably also remind people that Mercanti was a cam girl before, and she openly admits that she'd rather return to that line of work than have to write actual video game guides for a website that covers video games. And that sort of just tells you everything that you need to know about Kotaku and the absolute state of these weird liberal websites. They'd rather cry and quit if they have to actually do their jobs, and that's amazing to me. It really shows you that ultimately that's what Kotaku was about in the end. It was never about video games or pop culture. And it was always about pushing the mind virus and virtue signaling. Well, Mercanti will probably leave Kotaku soon anyway, since they won't let her complain on the website anymore. And she now needs to actually play video games and do something productive. I love it. I love seeing Kotaku fall apart like this. Just proves what we've all been saying for so long. They're a giant waste of time and nobody working there actually cared about video games ever. And as you can see, the way this industry is going, we're being attacked from all fronts. When it's not woke weirdos pointlessly virtue signaling or calling to assault those they disagree with, we also gotta deal with corporate greed and disingenuous reviews that omit critical information in order to stay in the good wills of corporations. My advice is to not feel overwhelmed, take a deep breath, and just relax. Go enjoy some video games today, maybe go out and have yourself a nice meal, or just go for a walk and listen to some music. This world is insane, yes, and the games industry is definitely up there and crazy, but let's just do what we can and laugh as much as needed. Everything is crazy, but it doesn't mean we have to be or stoop to these people's levels like Mercanti or Dani. And if Dragon Dogma 2's microtransactions turn you off that much, I guess wait for a sale on the game then. Yeah, it's fun. I'm not having the time of my life or anything personally. Final Fantasy Rebirth is better in my opinion anyway. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, and share the video if you enjoyed it. Thanks to my patrons as always. Take care of yourselves and have a wonderful day. Have some water and enjoy your life, and I'll see you in the next one.